Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
Has your dental practice stopped growing? Maybe you've hit a bit of a plateau. You feel things are maxed out. And you're wondering, what do you need to do to bust through this plateau and get your practice up to the next level? Well, that's what we want to talk about in this week's episode of Dental Business RX. My name is Jeff Blumberg, and I'm your host. And I'm joined this week by Sabri Blumberg, the Deputy Chief Operating Officer here at MGE. And those of you who have listened to the podcast for a while know Sabri. She's been on a number of episodes. But in a nutshell, Sabri is in charge of all technical delivery here at MGE. She's the most knowledgeable person when it comes to practice management. And I think we have you all hooked up over there, Sabri.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Now it's interesting with this episode because we were talking about this and it's sort of what inspired the episode.
Yeah.
And you've run into quite a few people like this lately, haven't you?
I have. And it's interesting. It's not just when you say hit a plateau, what it brings to mind immediately is that somebody's doing these big numbers.
Okay.
And they can't grow anymore.
All right.
But that's not true. Sometimes somebody is stuck at lower numbers, but what resolves it is the same. You resolve it the same way.
Interesting. So you're saying, so like the plateau could come in at many different points.
Oh, yeah.
And the solution is similar each time.
Correct. I mean, there's variations of it, but it's always going to boil down to a combination of the things we're going to discuss.
Okay, cool.
That's going to resolve it.
All right. Then without further ado, so what is the reason that practices for the and obviously I know every situation is different.
Yeah.
Right. But for the most part, what's the most common reason you see that an office hits a plateau?
Well, it's interesting you asked that because you as you said, it could be because of different reasons, but it's always an organizational issue.
Okay.
It always requires reorganization.
Okay.
Yeah. It usually has nothing to do. People usually assign a reason why or think that the reason that they are plateauing to space issues.
Or like I have no more chairs or something.
Right. I have no more chairs. It's going to be, but those are not organizational issues. And that's usually the wrong reason why.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so it's an organizational issue. Is there like a specific aspect of the organization or?
It's going to be either the sales area that needs to be reorganized.
Okay.
The production area. Mm-hmm. That needs to be reorganized, or the way that they are scheduling. It's going to be one of those three things.
Is that always the case?
Always.
Or? Interesting.
Always. I mean, when I say reorganize, it's interesting because there's the personnel component to that as well that we can get into later, right? It's going to boil down to people have to do these things.
We're not going to stay a half hour or 30 minutes or less if we do that, probably.
No.
But yeah,
no.
It deserves its own episode.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So then let's talk. So you got these three areas: production, sales, and scheduling, you said. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now let's say I've hit a plateau and you're talking to me. I'm a client because this happens to, obviously you see it with new clients, right? And it happens to MGE clients as they bust through to various higher levels, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say I have, you're interviewing me. What kind of questions are you going to ask to figure out, what we have to do to get things going?
Well, the first thing I'm going to take a look at is your sales.
Really?
Always.
Okay.
Right? Because sales drives growth.
Okay.
Right. The more I sell, the more I'm going to be able to produce, the more I'm going to collect.
Okay.
So it's always going to be the sales that drives the growth. So that's the first area I'm going to take a look at. Mm-hmm. Right. And the sales area really divides into three different things. Mm-hmm. Right. The person's ability to close the cases that they are presenting.
So their individual communication skill.
Correct.
All right.
Correct. Because if I have plenty of sales opportunities for the doctor, but he's only closing 20% and we're wasting the other 80% of the treatment plans that we could be converting, then obviously that's what I'm going to zone in on.
Got it.
Right? Let's get the closing percentage up.
Now, just as an aside.
Yeah.
Because you have people listening at home and they're going to want to, what is my close rate? What metrics are you using to determine close rate?
I take a look at how many cases are they presenting and the dollar value of the treatment that they are presenting and the conversion of those.
Do you look at this from one viewpoint or two? So let's say, for example, the last month, let's say I'm a doctor and I diagnosed, $100,000 worth of dental treatment that was needed. And I presented all 100 of it. And I closed, using the number you gave a second ago, 20,000. Okay. And by close, we're talking about the patient has agreed to it, has made financial arrangements for it.
Correct.
Yeah. Not just that they said they want to do it.
No.
Some this year, some next year, and some the year after. We're talking talking about they're going to do it.
That's right. Like proper financial arrangements have been made in accordance with the office policy. Closed.
Fine. So then they agree they're going to do. I've gotten $20,000 closed this month, and let's say that 100,000 broke down into 10 cases.
Yeah.
All right. So here's where this gets interesting. So let's say I presented 10 cases. I closed 20,000. There were 10 cases worth 100,000, but one of those cases were $20,000 case. So that's the one I closed.
Yes.
I didn't close the other 9 people.
Correct.
So are you looking at both those aspects?
Correct. Because, if the amount of people I'm closing, if I'm only closing 10% of the people, and I got lucky that it happened to be a bigger case and that saved the month.
Sure.
Right? That's not good. I'm letting 90% of the treatment plans walk out. But not just that, as a doctor, 9 out of 10 people that are coming to you for help, you're not able to help because they won't accept your treatment plan. That's not good.
Okay.
Right? So from a dollar value, it looked good on paper, but 90% of the people I should have converted.
Got
You
it.
were just lucky that month.
Got it. Okay, fair enough. All right, so it's my sales ability.
Yeah.
You're looking at with relation to sales.
Yeah.
What else are you looking at?
So I'm looking at if the closing percentage is acceptable. Let's say the doctor's closing on average between those factors about 60% of the cases. I would consider that acceptable.
Okay.
Can we get that higher? Of course you can. But
Sure.
60% is pretty acceptable.
Sure.
Right? A full treatment, not some treatment. Right.
Now, that's something I think that's worth talking about.
Yeah.
Because this is something we've talked about for years.
Yeah.
Is someone will present, and I'll just speak to your point, they'll present 6 crowns. Patient says they'll do 2 this year, 2 next year, 2 the year after to maximize my insurance participation.
Yeah.
And then, because if you ask, this is just something we found.
Yeah.
If you ask the average doctor, what did you just close there?
Yeah.
They'll say, I closed a case for 6 crowns.
That's right.
Because the patient said they were going to do it.
Right. That's not closed.
No, and it's usually what you see is the next year you come back at them for the other 2 crowns and they go, oh, I thought we did those already.
That's right.
Yeah, they're not closed.
No, not at all. Or they have all kinds of other work that now needs to be done because we put off their treatment instead of just getting them healthy. Right. So, no, what I'm talking about, because I hear this sometimes, like, no, I close 8 out of 10 cases. And then I compare it against a dollar value and you see that, they closed only a portion, like they only closed a perio and they never got to the dentistry. Right. And then their recall system is so bad, those patients never even show up again to do the dentistry. Right. So it's, So, I mean, ultimately, as a dental practice, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a healthy patient. We're not trying to, just do dentistry, right? They're a doctor's office. You're supposed to have healthy patients. So, we're talking about full treatment plans accepted.
Okay.
So, providing that the closing percentage, the conversion of the patients to accepting their treatment plans is good, then the next thing I'm going to take a look at is the amount of treatment they have to close.
Okay.
Right. So if they're converting 60% of 100,000 and they're stuck at 60, right? Yeah. Can I get that closing percentage up a little bit? Probably. And we're going to work on that. But more importantly, I'm going to take a look at, okay, well, how do I get this person more treatment to present?
Right. Because they're diagnosing what they see. There's nothing they can invent to diagnose.
That's exactly right. You can't make stuff up.
Right.
Right. So that means they need more sales opportunities.
And how would you create that?
Well, there's really, roughly speaking, 3 kinds of sales opportunities in dentistry. You've got your new patients, which really are your weakest sales opportunity. I'm not even going to get into why, right? But unless you have a brand new practice, you really want most of your sales coming from your existing patients.
Now, could you do me a favor?
Yeah.
And say that again, because someone might have just heard that go by. Like you just said, new patients are the weakest sales opportunity.
Yes.
Yet you see, especially, in marketing to, prospective clients, most people think that new patients are the solution to everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they are a solution, and you do need new patients because there's always going to be attrition.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is you definitely want, if you're a startup practice, you're completely reliant on new patients because you have no patients, right?
Sure.
So there's new patients has its place in the organization for sure. I'm not saying new patients are bad, but I'm saying if I'm trying to make my sales quota, right, understand again that my growth and my income is directly related to my sales, right? So if I'm trying to get that sales number to go up so that my numbers grow overall, I'm going to want to go to the sales that I have the most of. Like, where's my most plentiful sales? Where do I have 60% of a doctor's charts have outstanding work in them? Mm-hmm. That's a tremendous amount of potential sales. If a doctor, and I do this often with new guys, I have them print out the last year of proposed treatment that didn't close. Mm-hmm. And it's ridiculous how much they're letting walk out the door.
Interesting.
Right? So existing patients.
So that's number 2. Number 1 is new patients, which is the weakest. Number 2 is existing patients.
Right. And those existing patients can either present themselves on the schedule in recall or on the doctor's schedule. Like, that is the patient that presented a partial or that accepted a partial treatment plan. Like, we're doing those crowns, they accept it, but they have not committed to their entire treatment plan yet. And we have the opportunity to add that.
Okay, so then because I know I interrupted you there midstream. So
no,
my
it's
primary
fine.
3 areas of sales opportunity: new patients, which again are the weakest.
Yes.
Patients of record,
who
are on the hygiene schedule, and patients of record who maybe I've done some of their treatment, but I haven't finished all of it.
Correct. And just to speak to new patients, I usually have the fewest of them, where I have tons of existing patients. They're also far more expensive to convert than an existing patient. And ultimately in a business, it boils down to profitability.
Right.
So if I have to spend more doctor time, more chair time, I have acquisition costs, have less of them, and they're less predictable because you don't know whether you're going to get a treatment plan out of that new patient or what the new patient's attitude is towards dentistry or just its general outlook in life.
Right, because they're new.
Right.
So then I guess, not to get too theoretical here, though.
Yes.
And you've maybe seen this, I imagine, not a lot in your career.
Yeah.
Because again, we know hygiene is usually a huge weak spot.
Correct.
For a lot of practices.
Correct.
So let's say you run into a practice, and maybe we have some clients in this boat. Their hygiene is just maxed out.
Yeah.
They have 15, 20 days of hygiene, right? They have an associate doc. Things are rolling, right? Or maybe 2 associates. And their sales are great. Their conversion rate is 70 or 80%.
Yes.
Like, they're just off the charts, right?
Yes.
Well, wouldn't at that point, I mean, this is very theoretical.
Go for it.
Wouldn't at that point then be the solution be new patients?
Yes, it would. But not always.
Okay.
Because if their hygiene's rocking like that, I have rarely seen a practice. It's so rare. I do see it, but it's so rare that I see a practice where the hygiene is rocking. And it's rocking because all their patients are in hygiene. It's usually a practice that has like 3,000 active patients and is running double hygiene and they're quote unquote rocking it.
I see.
Right. And when they should be seeing quadruple that. So now I'm not usually going to quadruple their hygiene. I'm not going to give them 4 hygienists at that point. Usually that's not my first solution.
Okay.
My first solution at that point is take a look if they're still in plants. Get them out of plants.
Okay.
Right. So that I increase the value of the chair time.
That makes sense.
And I have so many patients that are not getting in hygiene, it's easy for me to start dropping plants and replace them with what I'm keeping with private patients.
Okay, because the hygiene's so underproductive.
Correct.
And you know, and it's interesting points. Jeff Santone was talking about this the other day, and we've both seen this phenomena. But you'll have somebody whose hygiene's so bad, they're really only seeing about, on average, 15 to 20% of their patient base regularly.
Correct.
And we've talked about in prior episodes how we spend all this money to get a new patient and then we spend very little to keep them in the practice, which is silly. But so, you know, a certain percentage of your patients are going to just show up regularly and be great. You know, at worst, they'll show up once a year, but they're showing up twice a year, 3 times a year, whatever, for hygiene. And you're seeing these people all the time. So then the phenomena you might feel as a doctor is, well, you know, I don't have any treatment in my hygiene department. Yeah. Because the only people you're seeing, you know, are the people who show up regularly. You're compliant patients. And you have, you know, 3,000 charts, but only 600 are active in hygiene. Right. And that's Santone spelled it out really nice the other day, which I thought was good. Right. Yeah. It was just we've all had this thought. Yeah. But their hygiene is clean. And Santone was absolutely correct. Right. Right. If you run into a situation like that, obviously at that point it's not to drop plants, it's not the solution, it's build the hygiene so I have more sales opportunities coming out of hygiene, which is where I should be getting most of my sales. But again, your outstanding treatment list
and the amount of patients you have doing the hygiene formula, which I know you've talked about a lot.
We talked about in other episodes.
Right, will tell you whether this is your solution or not.
Okay.
Yeah,
and if they want, you know what, if we'll just throw it up there as a download. If you want to download a copy of the hygiene formula, this sort of diagnoses the health of your hygiene department. We'll put it on the episode webpage. If you want to download it, it's a quick little spreadsheet. You enter some numbers, I think 3 numbers from the practice, and it tells you what your hygiene compliance rate is.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the third component of sales is making sure that organizationally they are set up to be able to sell.
Okay.
So that's the doctor. I have enough time to sell.
Right.
Right. If I have one doctor with 3 hygienists or 2 hygienists, and he's working out of 2 chairs or she's working out of 2 chairs, then and I have one front desk person. Obviously, that person's not going to have any time to sell.
Right.
Right. Another organizational issues could be they're doing pre-authorizations when they're not required to, like with PPO. I mean, there's no faster way to kill your ability to sell than to do pre-authorizations.
Well, you told me about this not that long ago, and I think we mentioned it in an episode. I was shocked that people are still doing predeterminations. I know that there are a couple of rare plans that require them.
Yeah, if you're doing unions or...
Right, but very few, I mean, and obviously, look, guys, check your plan, but or the insurance company, but very few require it. But people, I was surprised people still do this stuff.
Yeah, it is. And it's mainly a misunderstanding. They mainly think they're required to. Actually seen it in the last 2 weeks, 3 times.
People still doing predeterminations.
Predeterminations are not dead yet, and they should be.
Interesting.
Right. And it's really just
and people think like they don't realize it's not a guarantee of payment you were telling me with one person.
Correct. They don't one person thought that that's what they needed in order to get paid, even though, and I had them pull out the form and just read. It says right there, it's not a guarantee of payment. Right. It's merely a verification of benefits. So it's either going to be that, or it's going to be the inability to communicate effectively with the patient to explain to them that their pre-authorization means nothing.
Right.
We already have their benefits verified. This is what they are, and they need the treatment. Right. But when a patient is insisting on a predetermination or pre-authorization, usually either the patient isn't closed, right, or the office doesn't know how to handle the patient and explain this effectively to the patient. But the thing that we do know is that pre-authorizations, because of the time that it adds, make the close rate go down dramatically.
Interesting.
Yeah, because the patient goes home and loses motivation, or their tires blow out, or life happens. Yeah. Right? It's like, how often have I been motivated to buy something and 4 weeks go by and I'm not that motivated to buy it anymore?
Exactly.
Right? Like life continues and your attention focuses on other things.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So really, those are the sales. That really is like nutshelling what you look at in sales.
So those are the 3 basic things you're
Correct.
looking at with relation to sales.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where you start with somebody, is you look at their sales.
Correct.
Okay. So now let's say you've looked at my sales, you've given me a couple pieces of advice, but you feel that there's more we need to do.
Right.
What would you look? You have production and you have scheduling. Which one are we looking at next?
Doesn't really matter from there. Those 2 are so interrelated, right? So scheduling, and I kind of touched on this in sales, like, is the schedule actually conducive to make sales happen, right? So what does that mean? Well, do we have the ability to put enough sales opportunities on the schedule? So, for example, that would be, there's not enough time to do sales. Like the doctor is scheduled so tight on their schedule that they don't have time to do those hygiene checks and diagnose treatment and talk to the patient about committing to that treatment or why it's important that they do.
Like they're spending 5 minutes trying to present a large case because they just don't have the time.
Correct.
Got it.
And that, again, that boils down also to I mentioned there's a staff component, a big staff component to this, right?
Well, we're kind of dancing around that one because a lot of this assumes that you have the right personnel in place and they know what they're doing. And
right. I mean, most importantly, you really need your hygienist to be able to back you up on this, or to just kind of pre-sell the patient so that if it's something new, all the doctor has to do is just confirm the diagnosis or change it. Or very often these treatment plans have already been diagnosed. I mean, you're not going to sell every patient on every treatment plan. 100%. You're going to have outstanding treatment, and that's going to sit already diagnosed. And all the hygienist has to do is just confirm and talk to the patient about it. They have an hour of a captive audience. I mean, the patient's laying there with their mouth open. They're not going anywhere.
They can't even answer half the time. That's true.
So the hygienist has lots of time to do this. And if they are effective at it, I mean, the hygienist is effective at it and they are comfortable doing this and you work with them to get them comfortable with it, they're a very effective part of your healthcare team and should be made part of this. Right. So, so your scheduling needs to allow sales to occur. It takes time to sell a patient, and your schedule needs to be a mix of sales and production.
Okay.
Right? A good mix of sales and production. I mean, whatever you want to produce, you need to at least sell that every day or you're not going to produce it. Right? Other scheduling issues could be that the doctor's being scheduled vertical. Operatories aren't being utilized properly. I don't have enough assistants. Assistants are not being utilized properly. I'm scheduling root canals against fillings, and I have 2 hygiene checks to do. Like things that are physically impossible.
Which we talked about that a lot on we actually have on DDS Success. I'll put a link on the episode webpage. I'm Mr. Link. We do have the scheduler course as well as the artist scheduling, which is the whole practice. And we did kind of allude to some of this stuff. Well, I didn't allude. I talked about it for a little bit. A few episodes back. It was actually a 2-episode series on building a good schedule. But that's more the organizational side of scheduling. They're just not organized. And I was surprised, at how few people actually are organized for their schedule. Because maybe they'll come up with an idea like, oh, it'd be great if I did big procedures in the morning and this and that and whatever. And then they throw it up front and they're told that they can't fill the schedule that way.
Correct. But that's a matter of staff training. And again, it always boils down. It always boils down, even these issues here, to a properly placed and trained staff.
That makes
and
sense.
Doctor.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense.
So that everybody's working together to convert these patients and grow the practice.
Okay, so, and I sidetracked you here. I'm sorry. You have the sales issue. We've got the organizational side of scheduling. Is that a good way to say it? Yeah,
because obviously incorrect or inefficient schedule screws up everything.
Okay.
Right?
And then are there any other scheduling points you'd hit on?
No, because the next one really boils down to production.
So what do you mean by production?
And it's kind of related to sales. Well, first of all, I can sell $200,000 worth of dentistry very easily. Right? In a month.
Sure.
But if I can only produce 100, we have a problem.
You're going to have a lot of refunds.
You're going to have a lot of refunds, or the schedule's going to push out way into the future, right? Which is interesting because, again, you brought up this oddity of dentists being very focused on new patients, right? But the other thing they've been really taught to do is that it's a good thing to have your schedule pulled out a month. I very often have new guys sitting in front of me that are very proudly showing me how next month is already booked. And I'm cringing going, you can't grow. Right? If we sell more, all that's going to happen is your numbers aren't going to go up. It's just going to book further into the future. And patients are going to get upset.
Obviously, the longer they have to wait, the better chance they're not going to show up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Plus, what does that say to a patient, right? Your treatment's very important. That's why you're going to do it right now. And that's why we're not going to care about what insurance pays. I'll see you in 3 months.
Well, how do you even, I guess that's the question from a sales perspective. Obviously, we teach clients about getting the patient to make it a commitment now. With prepaying or whatever. But how would you even do that? And we tell people not to, obviously, but well, specifically, if you're going to get the patient to pay in full today for the treatment plan, you want to deliver that treatment in the next couple of days.
Correct, because it's not important that they pay. It's important that they get the treatment.
Well, that's why they pay. They pay to get the treatment. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're here.
That's right.
But I don't even know how someone could pull that off, like from a mental perspective.
Tell
me that I need $10,000 worth of treatment, and then good, my next opening is 9 weeks from now.
Correct.
Then I'd be like, great, I'll pay you 8 weeks from now.
And
I'll take that spot on your schedule.
Correct. So when you see these schedules that are going out further, ordinarily what you see is that, yes, it's booked, but these are not big prepaid cases. Right? Or full prepaid cases. These are partial treatment plans. These are what insurance is covering. Like the sales usually aren't great in these practices, just a schedule.
You know what's funny? Because you hear that a lot, don't you? I'm booked out 2 months in advance, 3 months in advance.
Or 3 weeks in advance,
which
and that's
terrible.
a good thing.
But if you go to the dental world, like dental education, CE,
Yeah.
right? If I'm going to book for some type of a CE course,
Yeah.
maybe a more extensive CE course, not just, a quick little CE course locally, but something that I'm going to spend a lot of next year doing.
Yeah.
I'm booking that a year in advance.
That's
Because in
right.
a lot of cases, those classes are limited, so I have to put a deposit down or whatever I have to do, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's fine
Yeah.
in the dental CE world where you've got a limited number of people that can fit into a class and,
Right.
things like that. That works.
Yes.
But that does not work in the consumer patient world where I have to wait weeks and weeks because the difference is maybe there's that one CE class you want to take.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 other people are doing something similar.
Right.
So there's like 3 opportunities. In your town,
Yeah.
if you have a patient and you're making them wait that long, there's a lot of other doctors.
That's right. You're
You
not
know?
the only game in town.
Exactly.
Right.
So you can't play that game.
And even though you're a great person and your patients are loyal to you, there's lots of other great dentists out there that are wonderful human beings.
Right, and especially for new patients.
That's right.
You make a new patient wait 3 weeks, trust me,
No.
they're hanging up the phone and calling somebody else.
That's right, because they're motivated now.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
So, and then the other thing is, and this is kind of a personal preference thing, is taking a look at how much the doctor's referring out, right? If the doctor's referring a lot of treatment out and the doctor has a desire to learn how to do those cases themselves, then sometimes it's a matter of taking CE, but that's usually not, or bringing in a specialist to keep these patients in-house, but that's not your preferred way. That's definitely not the way I'm going to handle a plateau.
Right.
But it's a factor in production, that's all.
And you just have to be careful with that, I think.
Well, it's not your go-to solution.
Right.
It's part of what you look at, but it's definitely not the solution.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, good. So that pretty much hits on it then.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Is there anything you would sum up? Because obviously everybody's situation is different.
Yeah.
And, you might have some folks out there that are plateaued at, 50 or 100 or 500.
Right.
Right. So while the basic framework may stay the same, the individual solution might be slightly different. What would you encourage those folks to do?
I think, one of these things is definitely going to solve their issue, right? Even if it's just a matter of my sales opportunities really are related to new patients. And we need to have more effective marketing and more effective referral programs, right? So, but what it boils down to for me is somebody needs to execute these solutions.
Got it.
So you're always going to need a competent office manager. And when I mean competent, I don't mean that they're a good worker or a smart human being or willing or effective. I'm not talking about any of those things. I'm talking about the person is trained to resolve these issues and to see these issues before they happen so you never get stuck.
So like a management education.
Right. People, that's like asking me to do dentistry. I'm not stupid, but I'm not going to be successful at that because I don't have a dental degree.
Right.
Right. So if you're going to ask somebody to manage a business, you at least need to make sure that they have some tools to do that effectively. So a competent office manager that's trained in management, not in the systems of dentistry.
Right.
Or just in the systems of dentistry is incredibly important. And, if somebody really would like me to take a look at which area would I tell them to hit or which area would I resolve or how would I sequence this, they can always email me or reach out to me and I'd be happy. It takes really 15 minutes of a conversation to really take a look at, okay, this is the problem.
Okay.
And then the solution for them is different in every practice, how we solve it.
No, that's awesome. So we'll put your email address as a link on the episode webpage. And if you want to just write it down, you can. It's Sabri, SABRIB, as in boy, at mgeonline.com. SabriB at mgeonline.com. All right, good. So that pretty well hits it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. And one thing that I'll add, obviously, is, sometimes people hit a plateau and they're like, okay, this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
Doing 180 a month. It's great. But you can't not grow.
Well, yeah. I mean, ultimately in a business, the most important thing is the profit margin, right? Because it's a business.
Right. So you can't not grow.
Right.
Inflation's growing, salaries are growing, expenses are growing. If you're not growing, you're shrinking.
Right, because your profit
that was like
margin
my
is
Ricky
shrinking.
Bobby line. Yeah, it's my Ricky Bobby line. If you're not growing, if you're not first, you're last. Yeah, if you're not growing, you're shrinking.
Right.
So,
Very good.
and it's something that you want to look at. You don't want to let it sit for too long. And it's not uncommon. You've seen business.
Yeah.
Where someone will be kind of puttering along at the same level, and then it actually starts to decline after a while.
Correct, because you lose a staff member or something happens. And ultimately, what it boils down to is it's so simple to fix. Why not just, if you're going to run a dental practice, why not just do it professionally and grow and have a great environment for your staff and your patients and yourself?
I think that's a great way to end the episode.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that was awesome. Sabri,
Yes.
Thank you for joining me this
You're
week.
welcome.
And don't forget, we have the downloads and Sabri's email address on the episode webpage. And if you want to find out more about MGE, you can find us at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Have a great week, and we'll see you at the next episode.